This video is brought to you by me. Please support me on Patreon so I can afford those silly little things like rent and putting Christmas presents on the dinner table. Okay, on with the show. Okay, so back in 2024, Vivian Madrano released her magnum opus, Hazbin Hotel, an animated adult comedy show she'd been shopping around for quite some time after releasing the pilot in-house, and it was considered the single most anticipated cartoon of all time. The show released to an overall positive reception, and most people who enjoyed it simply wanted more. And then, a year and a half later, Season 2 released, and we certainly got more. More characters, more songs, longer runtime, and also more problems. I did my own review of Season 1 when it released, coming away with an overall very positive attitude towards the show, and while I found myself still enjoying Season 2 for all of its fun characters and wacky nonsense, I found there were issues it has that I really can't ignore. So let's go over all that, shall we? Let's talk about Hazbin Hotel Season 2. The format of this video will be character and story analysis for the major players of each faction first, those being the Hotel, the Vees, and then Heaven, followed by my major criticisms in their own section, which you can jump to at the timestamp on screen if you're just here for that. First though, a quick summary. So Season 2 picks up a month after the end of Season 1, with the hotel busier than ever as the battle with Adam and the subsequent remodeling has brought a lot of attention. Just not for the reasons Charlie was hoping, unfortunately. Also, I have the sneaking suspicion that this guy killed his wife.
Are all the sinners here part of your anti-angel army? I killed my wife!
Oh no, called a hunch. Charlie has spent the last month in absolute mess, mourning the death of our beloved Snack Boy and slowly losing her mind in a grief-induced spiral of guilt and despair. Meanwhile, the Vees, those inane and uninformed malcontents, have spent the time scheming on how to grab power as Vox wants to take over Heaven and rule everything, which I'm sure would go over well for everyone involved.
They're fucked!
Yeah, it's probably fine. Meanwhile, somewhere skyward, the Court of Heaven is in a tizzy because our favourite Snake Boy's appearance is completely unprecedented, and Sarah refuses to believe he isn't evil until Bird Mommy here says, "What if we heard him out?" And Sarah goes, "Oh shit, he was redeemed," and then immediately regrets every decision she's ever made and leaves him in Emily's care, which...
That didn't help, actually.
Gee, you think? Sarah has a guilt-induced breakdown while the speaker very gently and supportively says fuck all to help, and Lute sings one of the best songs in the season during her own mental breakdown before Sarah puts Heaven on lockdown and Emily pops down to tell Charlie the good news. She takes it as well as you'd expect.
Congratulations! Bye!
Anyway, Charlie then begins to make terrible decisions fueled by manic guilt and the need to prove herself, most of which involve giving Vox all the ammo he needs to slander the hotel.
No! Hey, you're doing that thing again where you take everything I say out of context. You're trying to make it look like I think Coolsville sucks. No! Don't record that!
While Alastor decides to take a long overdue vacation.
Fuck this, I quit.
He's earned it, I think. He visits Rosie and we get both his long overdue backstory and the reveal that she was his contract holder the whole time, which I don't think anyone predicted. He wants his staff fixed and she says, "Not until you've learned your lesson, young man," which leaves him to mope for all of about 10 seconds before he realizes, wait a second, I can make someone stupid fix my problems for me, and then picks a fight with Vox before offering him a deal with some suspiciously non-specific conditions.
What conditions?
Let these irrelevant little nobodies run along home. But more importantly, you're not to lay your hands on Charlie Morningstar.
Which Vox, being a fucking moron, accepts without hesitation before immediately dragging Alastor through a humiliation parade that shows off just how big a loser the TV head actually is, and then proceeds to run his presidential campaign and go about recruiting some of the more easily impressed overlords onto his team, and also makes an absolute racist fool of himself.
Are you serious?
Yeah, okay.
Cha-cha-cha! Stop it!
Also, Alastor is just hanging out having the time of his life in his little wheelie chair, sowing the seeds of discord and divorce within Vox's brain, remaining the single best character in the entire season. Meanwhile, Charlie tries to get into contact with Heaven, Vaggie and Lucifer have a terrible idea together, and the angels pop down with apology gift baskets which gets them the dressing down they deserve.
You are apologizing for genocide with gift baskets?
Absolutely tragic. The worst person you know has a point. Vox declares war, Charlie freaks out at her dad and Vaggie and gets a face full of hard truth, and the two start fighting and get absolutely nowhere with anyone.
I don't have time for this lesbian drama.
Husk quits, crashes out, and then commiserates with Angel before deciding he actually does want to go back to the hotel for totally not gay reasons, and Charlie and Vaggie have their own conversation. All really good songs, by the way. And then Vox ruins everything again by fucking Angel up, revealing that he's been using him without his knowledge the whole time, and then blows a hole in heaven with a cannon powered by Lucifer. Seriously, fuck this guy. Our heroes hatch a plan that goes off the rails for plot reasons. Alistair crashes in a little favour to get himself back on top, and Vox shows he literally cannot comprehend how contracts work.
What, this? This doesn't count. I didn't hurt her.
I didn't say not to hurt her, you moron. I said you're not to lay your hands on her. And you did! You pathetic amateur!
And then they all duke it out with Vox getting his shit rocked again. Nifty showing Velvet the door. And Valentina rolling snake eyes.
Goodbye. What?
Vox loses his marbles in Act 3 as predicted and hits the cannon's self-destruct button before Val suggests he cool his head. And the day is saved by the power of friendship and also these other cunts who don't want to die. And everything is fine forever after that. Except for Angel leaving the hotel because of complicated reasons, Valentino being left in charge of Vox Tech, which I'm sure he won't fuck up at all, and Lilith finally getting off her deadbeat ass and curling Charlie back. And that is season 2. Right, so obviously there's a lot to unpack here, so let's just get right into that. Starting with...
The crows in the garden are laughing at my expense, drowning out all the lies that I might have told instead.
I think Charlie is as good a place to start as any. I actually find her a lot more interesting to talk about this season, because she has a real character arc this time around. Charlie experienced some character growth in season 1, largely revolving around gaining the confidence required to actually lead, but she didn't have a real arc because she really didn't need one. She was already right, and her role in the story was to kickstart arcs for the other members of the cast by giving them a place they could grow and heal. She didn't need to change, everyone else in heaven and hell just needed to get on her level. That's certainly not the case this time though, and Charlie's character arc centers on her need to mature and learn to consider the consequences of her actions, because if she's not careful, she'll end up hurting everyone she cares about and tear down everything she's managed to build. The biggest issue Charlie has this season is her insistence on playing Vox's game and trying to prove herself to him despite everyone informing her that's a terrible fucking idea and trying to get it to stop. This has actually always been an aspect of her personality. Charlie tends to get an idea in her head and rush forward without thinking things through, usually with the best of intentions, but road to hell and all that. She treads on people's toes a lot with her headstrong personality, which is great when she's demanding heaven follow their own supposed morals, or insisting that there's good in people, but really kinda shitty when she's insisting on correcting the obviously full of shit news, or overstepping Angel's boundaries and dragging him into her scheme to prove redemption is possible. Her biggest problem is that she doesn't stop to think or listen to the people around her, and it ends up hurting her friends and the hotel until she's finally forced to confront the fact that she'll only make things worse if she doesn't stop acting like a child. I've seen a lot of people shitting on Charlie for how she acts in this season, which is fair because she inadvertently causes quite a bit of damage, but I strongly disagree with the notion that she's a bad character for this, because it's actually very easy to see why she's like this, and it comes down to 2 basic points. The first, and this is the most obvious, is that she's being driven into a manic state by guilt and desperation. At the end of the first season and the start of the second, Charlie still has absolutely no idea that Pentious was redeemed. She just thinks she got her friend killed and is barely holding it together despite desperately needing to believe that redemption still is possible. So when Emily pops in and tells her that he was redeemed and is in heaven, but doesn't mention how, all she has to go on is the fact that something in the process redeemed him. Charlie is so desperate to prove that redemption is possible and that the hotel works that she refuses to stop and process anything properly, leading to her letting the Vees in the hotel and overstepping with Angel and then doubling down on trying to fix Vox's slander because, in her mind, if he can just see that she's right, if everyone will just see that she was right, then it will fix everything. Again, she's working with good intentions, but utterly failing to consider the ramifications of her actions. Also, none of this is helped by her mommy issues. Something that's really important for writing strong characters is having both their negative and positive traits informed by the same source, and it's something that we see with Charlie. Her naivety, idealism, kindness, and headstrong nature are what allow her to see the best in people and give them the chance they need to become better, which we see with Angel Dust and Serpentious. But these same traits also lead her to extending the benefit of the doubt out to people who don't deserve it and will take advantage of her for it, such as with how she repeatedly gives the Vees everything they need to tear apart her image. And this is actually what leads us to the second point of why she's like this in this season: privilege. As the Princess of Hell, Charlie has lived a very sheltered life, and this has made her incredibly naive. She's never had to deal with people like the Vees or Katie Killjoy before, which means she doesn't understand that even acknowledging them gives them a level of legitimacy they don't deserve. She doesn't understand how easy it is to twist her words or paint her in the worst light, and she also won't stop to listen to Vaggie and Angel and Husk when they tell her to stop fucking doing that. She's spent her life sheltered from the worst hell has to offer, and doesn't actually stop to listen to the people who know better until it's almost too late. All of these things combine to make Charlie her own worst enemy this season, as her manic hyperfixation ends up nearly costing her everything. But again, these traits are also what allow her to be so kind and to help people as well. Despite her hurting him, Angel still considers the hotel to be his home, and the kindness she showed Serpentius not only allowed him a second chance and helped him grow to the point that he could be redeemed, but her lessons on bettering herself stuck with him enough that he teaches them to Sarah and helps her grow as well. Charlie needs to mature, and she's begun to do just that, but she also has done and continues to do good, and she has people by her side to help keep her on track. All that said, no amount of character analysis can change the fact that it's just not fun to watch a previously very likable character get whacked with a moron bat for 3/4 of the season. Charlie really suffered from the writing this time around. On the subject of people by her side, Vaggie also experiences some growth this season, though a lot of it was kept in the visual details. At the start of the season, Vaggie is trying out new names with the intention of distancing herself from her old identity as an exterminator working for Adam, but she really struggles to find anything that fits. This actually ties into her eventually adopting the role as the hotel's manager quite nicely, because her proficiency there also stems from her old job. The Exorcists were essentially Heaven's military, and the military calls for a great deal of order and precision and attention to detail, and this is something Vaggie really does excel in. While Charlie is off on her bullshit, Vaggie is almost single-handedly running the hotel, making sure the guests' needs are being met, keeping things clean, and generally running a tight ship. I actually really like this because it's a reapplication of the kind of regimented orderliness that her military career would call for, but for the purpose of nurture over violence. She's fully keyed in to what each guest needs, and this is even what ultimately brings Baxter to their side.
Well, you made sure that my blankets were always folded at my requested 45-degree angle to make it more tuckable to my liking. So I assume that made us best friends, isn't it obvious?
This is obviously meant to be funny, but the fact that she actually did put in the effort to make him as comfortable as possible shows monumental growth from the awkward attempts to connect to the rest of the cast in season 1. She's really starting to find her place, and this is reflected in her only changing the spelling of her name. She realized that she doesn't need to completely cast aside her past to be who she needs to be now, as her experiences made her who she is and will serve her well. She's by far the most put together member of the hotel this season, which is good because Charlie desperately needs her, though for some reason she still puts Nifty in charge.
Rise, children. To the sun.
That brings us to Husk and Angel, and I honestly just love how close these two have grown. They were already getting pretty comfortable with each other by the end of the last season, but now they look like they're one step away from initiating a cuddle every scene they're in, which is very cute. Husk actually experiences the most growth between the two, which is absolutely spurred on by his relationship with his not-quite boyfriend. I find Husk very fun to talk about because he's someone who seems to struggle with accepting hope exists, despite the fact that he continually inspires it in Angel. He seems to have long since convinced himself that nothing matters and that there's nothing worth getting attached to, but that facade grows increasingly harder to keep up as he comes to genuinely cherish the hotel and the people in it, especially Angel, who he's become significantly attached to. Husk says himself that he tends to stay out of things, but he's the first to come to Angel's defense and help build his confidence, and when he crashes out and falls down the well of escapism, Angel is the one who convinces him to return home to the hotel. There's a very strong parallel to the last season with these two, and I honestly think it's where the writing is the strongest this time, since the two have effectively switched roles, and now Husk is the one being pulled out of his extremely unhealthy coping mechanisms. This is actually one of the reasons I really like Love in a Bottle, because it demonstrates just how miserable Husk really is. Nobody who's happy drinks like he does, nor do you do so because you like to drink. People only engage in this level of alcoholism as a desperate attempt to escape reality. They want to numb the pain they feel and forget the cause of it, however briefly. This is Husk trying to escape not just his depression and self-loathing, but also his growing feelings towards Angel and his attachment to the hotel and its residents. But then Angel does his thing and he's forced to accept it, and it's good. It's a good character arc. This is actually what makes him being the first person after Charlie to lend their power in Hear My Hope so significant, because it demonstrates his willingness to fight for both his home and his newfound sense of hope for the future. He's choosing to be better and believe in better, even if he won't admit it out loud. Honestly, Husk's relationship with Angel is probably my favourite part of the entire season, because even just their facial expressions and body language communicate so much, and it's one of the things that made Angel leaving the hotel so fucking heartrending. Being a Husker Dust fan this season was like being lovingly kissed on the forehead and then immediately cracked across the face with a frying pan. Vivsy, you monster! I have less to say about Angel himself right here because most of my thoughts on him will be brought up in the other segments, so we'll come back to him in a bit. He largely plays a supporting role in Husk's character arc this season, which works fine. I also don't have much of substance to say about Cherry, Baxter, or Nifty that isn't just uncritical gushing. Cherry is cool and her friendship with Angel is touching, Baxter is an adorable little shit and I want more of him, and Nifty remains the single most unhinged gremlin anyone's ever seen and I love everything about her. This finally brings us to Alastor, who is, as always, one of the most enjoyable characters Vivsy has ever created. His scene in the cuck chair aside, though trust me I will get to it, Alastor is just the single most fun character to watch throughout the entirety of the show, especially when he's sliding into view on that swivel chair or gesticulating with his feet because his hands are tied and he's just that southern. He's just the most fun character outside of Nifty, and it entirely stems from him just being the biggest and most glorious bastard in any given room. He's always been a huge mystery, both in and out of universe, and this season we finally got some answers to the question that has been Alastor since the pilot, along with a bunch of other questions to take their place. I actually really love that his contract is with Rosie, because it completely recontextualizes the relationship and all of their interactions in the first season. It also makes perfect sense that he was the one who reached out to her, because Alastor has pretty much always been defined by his desire for control and his complete unwillingness to appear vulnerable. I keep seeing people make the claim that Charlie doesn't care about Alastor, most often in regards to his injury from Adam, but I'd like to remind these people that Charlie doesn't fucking know Alastor was injured. She never saw him get injured, he just vanished and then reappeared during the closing song, and seemingly was completely unharmed. And in season 2, he's still hiding the injury despite the fact that seeking help would, the moment you think about it, be the smart thing to do. But Alastor is pathologically incapable of displaying vulnerability, and that's because he's obsessed with power and control. This is the entire basis of why he's constantly smiling to begin with. It's his entire thing.
A smile is a valuable tool, my dear. It inspires your friends, keeps your enemies guessing, and ensures that no matter what comes your way, you're the one in control.
Hell, this is why Alastor makes a deal with Rosie when he's alive. Alastor was non-white in a time of extreme racial inequality. He didn't want to be at the mercy of another system stacked against him, so he traded his soul for power and ends up regretting that it means he's at Rosie's beck and call. But unlike most in his position, he gets out of it because he's actually quite smart. This leaves Rosie upset, especially when he holds the cast hostage for power, but I mean, she's gotta respect the man for how well he plays the game. This season also shed light on the nature of his relationship with Vox. The nature being that Vox is his pathetic loser stalker, who Alastor wants nothing to do with until he realizes he can use him to fix his problem, which actually demonstrates a somewhat unexpected side to the guy. He's fully willing to embarrass himself and be put at a temporary disadvantage to further his goals, so long as the terms are set by him. And it's also just really fucking funny to watch him make Vox dance to his tune with zero effort whatsoever. Alastor basically just hands the man a rope and watches Vox hang himself. Alastor's strength is also an interesting talking point because the man is truly ridiculously powerful, even without the massive boost he clearly gets from his staff. It's the reason he has to go to such extreme measures to break his deal with Rosie. Because even when he's been wounded by Adam and is severely depowered, the Vees still have to gang up on him to pose a real threat. And when Vox gets the power boost of being recognized as the strongest sinner in hell and goes super mode, he still can't handle Alastor operating without the staff boost. What's funny is that the two seem to be fairly evenly matched at first, but Alastor being the smarter fighter is what secures his victory. Alastor may be physically weaker, but he makes up for it with creative tactics and environmental manipulation, which leaves Vox and his rampaging brute force method completely in the dust. Alastor's intelligence is what ultimately puts him on top at the end of the season, and I'm excited to see what he gets up to next, especially because now he's at the hotel to pursue his own agenda and not because Rosie told him to, which is something we still don't know the reason for. It's implied that he's still there because of an interest in Lucifer, but we'll just have to wait and see. Oh, I'd like to see more of Alastor's relationship with Nifty explored. She's kind of implied to be the only person he has an uncomplicated fondness for, and she absolutely cares about him in return if the way she immediately ran to his aid is any indication. Valentino threatening her seemed to be the only thing that truly worried him, and he even kept the roach crown she made for him, so there's more there than he's probably willing to admit, although Alistair being fond of you is really no guarantee of safety or care. I hope the show takes time to explore his relationship to her now that he's seemingly unrestrained, and especially now that Vox is stuck as a fucking iPod and unable to bother him. Oh, speaking of...
Won't you go down that state and dig up the garden, darling? Get your hands dirty and rip up the garden. Won't you cut down that apple tree for me?
The Vees were kind of in a weird position last time, as they mostly existed to be set up as major antagonists for this season, and, well, you can't argue that didn't happen, but most of the time and attention was given to just one of them, with the other two being pressed into much smaller roles, which, depending on your viewpoint, is either a really good representation of Vox's domineering ego-tripping, or just lazy writing. I'm of a generously optimistic mindset, so I'm going to say it's the former. I think it's safe to say that your opinion on Season 2 as a whole will at least be partially affected by how much you like the Vees, or at least how much you want to see them get their shit wrecked in the finale. If you like them, then great, but if you don't, the season's gonna feel like a slog. I think the Vees work fine as antagonists, but I'm gonna be honest, Vox and Val just disgust me to my very core. I can't deny they're at least somewhat interesting to talk about though, so let's get into it. From the start of the season, the Vees are positioned as diametrically opposed to the hotel. You can see this as early as Hazbin Guarantee, where their attitude towards sinners acts as a twisted reflection of Charlie. While she genuinely wants to help everyone she can, and at no personal gain, the Vees' entire strategy revolves around exploiting people as viciously as possible and then tossing them aside when they're not useful anymore, which is an attitude Vox eventually takes towards his own companions, but we'll get to that in a bit. The Vees set themselves apart from the other overlords in the show by being the only ones to act in union as opposed to mutual indifference. The pooling of their shared power and assets makes them technically the biggest fish in the pride ring, but individually none of them are anything particularly special. Their partnership is really the only thing that makes them stand out, something that definitely bothers Vox, if not the other two. Vox received a massive boost in importance this season as, while his relationship to Alistair was only briefly touched upon before, it's now the focal point of his character arc. Vox's obsession with Alistair is his most obvious defining feature, to the point that it seems to overshadow his other character traits for a lot of people. This is actually completely understandable because his obsession with Alistair is so upfront and in your face that it kind of demands your attention. The man literally popped off in the middle of sex when Alistair told him to square up. You could not get more pathetically obsessed than that if you tried. Here's the thing though, Vox's fixation on Alistair comes from the same place as his hunger for power and his desire for worship, and his drive to be brighter and everything else that's wrong with him. Dissatisfaction. The man is entirely defined by envy and entitlement. Vox is completely broken. He's a man who will never, ever be happy with anything he has because he never learned how to be satisfied. He's a man who sees that someone else has something he doesn't and desperately needs to have that for himself, so he just tries to take it no matter what. He spent his whole life doing that. He saw that someone else at his TV station was getting more attention, so he killed him and took his place, and then the next person, and the next, until he ran the entire thing and was the face of every show, but it still wasn't enough and he died unfulfilled and continued that pattern in hell as well. This is why, despite the Vees being the most influential overlords in hell, he still looks up at heaven and says that it should be his too, because it's something he doesn't have and therefore something he should have. So how does this relate to Alistair? Well, the thing is, he couldn't continue his usual MO because sinners can't be killed, not by normal means anyway, which meant that he could no longer just murder someone and take their place. So he saw Alistair in a position above and beyond him, and he couldn't kill the radio demon because he's both immortal and vastly stronger than Vox himself. So he just had to sit with this growing obsession that became the closest thing to love he was capable of feeling. And then he got shot down and acrimonious lust fills his every waking thought. Of course Alistair fucking rejected him. Why the fuck wouldn't he? He knows exactly what kind of man Vox is, and even if Al wasn't Hell's biggest ace in the hole, he's nowhere near stupid enough to think the man's fundamental nature would change. Vox would be happy until someone else caught his attention, and then he'd focus on them and pull away from Alistair, just as we see him do with Valentino. And Alistair isn't willing to be a sideshow in someone else's story. And even if you do believe Vox was truly in love with him, which I seriously doubt he's even capable of, Alistair's harsh rejection certainly doesn't excuse everything Vox did afterward. The man took one rejection and built his entire identity around getting back at him. He's an absolute nutjob loser shithead. Some people think that Vox going completely brain dead whenever Alistair is involved and ruining his own life is unrealistic, but it really isn't. Vox is exactly the kind of person you'd see frequenting QE forums or lolcar forums, the kind of person whose need to feel above others goes beyond any and all reason or thought. If you've ever seen the kind of people who form parasocial hate obsessions with creators, then you've seen someone like Vox. They are pitiful, deeply unhappy losers with nothing going in their lives outside of their fixation, and they need that fixation to convince themselves that their lives are not depressingly devoid of meaning. Vox's acrimonious lust for Alistair makes him exceptionally easy to manipulate because he's so desperate to prove he's better, but Alistair's manipulations don't do anything but reveal the intentions he already had. He always intended to use Valentino and Velvet for his own gain and always considered himself better than them. All we see happen is the mask slipping a little bit faster than it would have otherwise as he grows more desperate to reach his goals. Aside from his obsession with Alistair, what sets Vox apart from the other overlords is his fixation on power for its own sake, which is the reason Alistair knows he can use him. Vox doesn't seek control or power or influence for any purpose outside of having them, which is why he's the schemer of the group and why he cares so much about appearances. They're just another way to maintain control. Val and Val both think his plan to take over Heaven is fucking dumb until he convinces them that it'll get them what they actually want, and he tries this tactic with every other overlord as well, revealing just how superficial his attempt at connecting to them is when he tries it on Carmine and Zestial. He feels entitled to everything, including their aid, so why would he bother actually trying to understand them? This sense of entitlement is also why he's constantly putting his hands on people. The shoulder touch he's so fond of is exactly the kind of innocuous contact that someone acting in bad faith can explain away as harmless if you tell them to stop, which allows them to treat you as if your simple desire to not be touched without giving permission is somehow an overreaction. Abusive people love doing this because it allows them to portray your bodily autonomy as only conditionally important, with the conditions being set by them. Obviously, I don't have proof that this is what Vox is doing, but he is absolutely the kind of person who would. Honestly, my favourite thing about Vox is just how routinely pathetic he's shown to be. He does the TV equivalent of sitting in the bushes outside the hotel, is routinely humiliated by people smarter than him, doesn't hesitate to immediately take the single most suspicious deal in the underworld, and in the end, after he gains his status as strongest sinner in hell, through no actual merit of his own, he still gets his ass handed to him by Alistair. That's actually what makes him lose his marbles in Act 3. He's finally forced to acknowledge that no matter what he does, Al is just better than him. And he can't deal with that, so he tries to nuke everyone. What a pathetic sack of shit. There's a lot more I could talk about with him, like his fascist rhetoric or how half of his songs are just him stealing the leitmotif from better people. But I've honestly just talked about him enough and I'm tired of it, so let's move on to his partner, I guess. Valentino is something of a loaded character, as his status as Angel's rapist abuser makes him the single most disgusting piece of shit in the entire cast. I'll be frank, I've hated this motherfucker from the moment he was introduced, and if I had my way, he'd have his wings ripped off, lit on fire, then shoved up his ass. I do not see the appeal of his character at all. I was actually very surprised last season by just how starkly realistic the abuse Val inflicted on Angel Dust was portrayed as. It was done remarkably well, and I had to give Madrona props for that. If you want my full thoughts on it, I've actually made a video on Angel's abuse that you can watch if you're so inclined a while ago. The thing for it should be popping up in the right corner of the screen right about now. But to keep a long story short, it was handled well, and if it made you uncomfortable to watch it, then that's good. You should always be at least a little uncomfortable seeing portrayals of abuse. If you aren't, something is very wrong. However, there really wasn't much to Valentino outside of his abuse of Angel last time, and with Season 2 bringing more focus to the Vees, this meant that Valentino necessarily needed to be more fleshed out, and some people really didn't like that. The audience was given a new insight into Vox and Val's relationship in this season, and we found it to be distinctively one-sided, as Val is shown to seemingly genuinely love Vox, but as I established earlier, Vox really isn't capable of doing the same due to his whole dissatisfaction thing. Vox honestly treats Valentino as more of an obligation of the job that he can sometimes fuck than anything else, and we even see him using Val's emotions to manipulate him into going with his plan, something he's clearly done in the past. As Velvet mentions, he only seems to make time for them when he wants something, and he's more than happy to trample on their feelings if it means furthering his goals or maintaining his ego. This is made especially clear when Vox attempts to save face by doing his freaky eye thing and demanding Valentino do what he says, but Vox knows this won't work. His mind control doesn't seem to work on any Overlord, but it definitely doesn't work on Valentino, who seems genuinely hurt that Vox would even pretend to try before he gets rightfully pissed. Vox just keeps trampling on the other two, and it's shown that Valentino finds it genuinely hurtful. This is actually what upset a lot of people, because all of this makes Valentino a victim of Vox, and that's a premise that doesn't gel with some people because they equate victimhood with innocence. I've talked about this before. People have a hard time reconciling a person's victimhood with their actions, but being a victim and being innocent are two mutually exclusive things. Someone can be an absolute bastard and still be a victim of abuse. And for the record, this is not that hurt people bullshit I see tossed around. I can't fucking stand people parroting that like it's a religious dogma. This is an acknowledgement that bad people are still people. They're still as complicated as you or me. And that is what we are seeing with Valentino here. We're seeing that Angel's abuser is also a complicated person with relationships and feelings, and more to him than merely the abuse we've seen him do. And it changes nothing. It excuses nothing. An abuser is still an abuser, no matter what pain or sadness they've suffered through in their life. A Freudian excuse is no fucking excuse at all. People got uncomfortable with this because they felt sorry for Val in the moments where his love was being taken advantage of, and that's not a bad thing. Your ability to briefly empathize with someone being hurt doesn't make you a bad person, but it also doesn't mean that they've been redeemed in any way, shape or form because they got to be sympathetic for 2 minutes. Valentino is still an irredeemable monster who physically, emotionally and sexually abuses Angel Dust, and he still deserves to be hung by his entrails and set on fire. He still abuses Angel and treats him like an object he owns. In fact, the reason he got mad at Vox for wanting to use Angel is because that's his favorite toy Vox is trying to steal, and Val doesn't like to share. Nothing he has done or that has been done to him in this season changes any of that. It's important to be able to acknowledge the humanity in bad people and still call them bad people, because in real life, the monsters and demons are always just people. And there are a few things more horrifying than what one person can do to another when they have power over them. That just leaves Velvet, my personal favourite of the Vees. Though, let's be honest, the competition wasn't exactly stiff. And let's be clear, Velvet is just as bad as the other two. She's fully aware of what they do and helps them to achieve their goals. The fact that she doesn't play a personal role in abusing someone doesn't make her better. Velvet claims to be the backbone of the Vees, and she honestly is. It's shown that both Vox and Val rely on her at different points for different things, with Vox needing her ability to spin things and Val needing her friendship more and more as the season progresses, and Vox becomes an increasingly bigger bastard. What's kind of funny is, since Velvet is a lesbian, Vox can't manipulate her the way he can Val, and just sort of resorts to screaming and threatening to get his way, which she's progressively less impressed by. Velvet is the only person in the tower willing to call him out in his bullshit aside from Alistar, who's mostly just there to incite a divorce. And it puts her in the weird position of being the closest thing to a voice of reason the Vees have. The disintegration of their relationship is actually a lot easier to track, because Vox just shows Velvet progressively less respect, to the point that he forces her to grind out an apology to Carmilla like a father dragging their kid to the neighbor's house to say sorry for breaking a window, and he keeps leaving her behind to walk home, which pisses her off to no end. In episode 3 they're hanging out in the same room or gleefully snarking over Charlie in the hotel, but by episode 7 he's just snarling demands at her and expecting total obedience, refusing to communicate the bare minimum she needs to do her job. Whatever friendship they had is likely dead in the water thanks to his treatment of her. In contrast, she seems to glow closer to Valentino over the course of the season, comforting him, stepping in when Vox tries to seduce him to get his way, and even her outfits start sharing design motifs with Val. They do have a rather touching friendship, even if they are complete bastards. Also, I really like the aesthetic of her powers. I guess she was a combination of VTuber and Etsy witch in life, and it makes it very fun to watch her fight both Husk and Nifty. Also, her outfits are always on point. Fight me. Overall, I think the Vees generally work as the main antagonists of the season okay, but only because of the way their relationship is strained and ruptured by Vox's ego. What's funny is that, despite their different personalities, the Vees all share the same flaw of being incredibly fucking stupid at times, often due to their own inflated egos. Vox I've already talked about at length, but Val is just objectively a fucking moron, and Velvet loses her fight against Nifty because she underestimates her and waits until it's too late to take things seriously, which is what gives Nifty and Baxter the the chance they need to turn the tables. They're all just kind of fucking idiots, but at least Velvet and Val aren't stupid enough to let Vox nuke the Pride Ring, and they eventually aid in the finale because they really don't want to fucking die, and so they can spin it in their favour. I understand people who were disappointed that they got off so comparatively easy. Trust me, I wanted them all dead and buried too, but apparently Madrona still has some plans for them, so I guess we'll see if there's any lasting consequences for Vox's fuck up. I think that covers all the important things. Did I miss anything?
I'm from fucking Florida! Ow!
Oh yes, very important. Thank you, Val. Now eat shit and die.
The ghosts at the window echo all our quiet prayers. When they come for us, they'll come with hammers and nails.
Of the three relevant groups in this season, Heaven is the one most hurt by the show's format issues. I'll get into this more when I talk about them in the criticism section, but a lot of the characters in Heaven, while fun or interesting, are made much weaker by the lack of time and attention spared to them. Abel and Lute are probably the worst off for this. As far as Abel goes, I think it makes perfect sense that he's so conflict averse. If the last time someone was mad at me, I became the first ever victim on CSI Old Testament, I'd also turn into a reflexive placater who avoids fights at any cost. But the problem is that his character just isn't explored at all until the 11th hour, where he speedruns his entire character arc in the middle of Hear My Hope, and you're just left wondering why he was in the show at all if he could easily be replaced by a lamp with a simpering face drawn on it for most of the season. There are things you can surmise if you look hard enough, but for a character suddenly made out to be very important, he really doesn't do anything. As far as Lute goes, she actually has the opposite problem in that she receives a lot of characterization and setup for no payoff whatsoever. Though on the subject of Lute, I actually find her mindset kind of fascinating because the woman is entirely incapable of seeing anyone from hell as a person, or at least not the sinners. Rather, she seems to see demons as rabid animals that need to be put down, which is why she's so adamant that redemption isn't possible. You can't redeem a soul that, in her eyes, isn't even a soul. Lute doesn't even lay the blame for Adam's death on the one who actually killed him. She just fixates on Charlie and Vaggie because, due to them both being at least partially angelic, they're the only ones who can be considered remotely close to people for her. She holds a grudge against Charlie for commanding the defense of hell, and the closest she comes to acknowledging the personhood of the sinners is being offended that they had the audacity to defend themselves from her attempt at genociding them. I think this is ultimately what makes her so fucking kill crazy over Adam. It's the fact that more consideration is being given to the lives of dangerous animals than the death of a real person. And here's the thing, it makes sense to me that there's no real payoff for Lute's arc this season. Her fracturing mental state and eventual betrayal of Heaven are things that necessarily require more than just one season to fully develop, and Viv has a habit of using current seasons to set up the antagonists of later ones. But just as with Abel, this is hampered by the show's format issues, and we just don't spend enough time with either one of them to make it feel like there was any real build up this season. Again, I'll expand on this a little bit later. This brings us to a Seraphim, the most important people in Heaven outside of her beloved Snake Boy. Emily is by far the simpler of the two to talk about, as she's pretty much just a winged version of Charlie, well-intentioned, very friendly, and hopelessly naive. Emily represents the kindness of Heaven, as well as the stupidity brought on by privilege. Her job is to attend to the needs of the souls and make them comfortable, and as such she's never really had to be the adult in the room before the events of the show, because she's only ever had to worry about keeping things fun. But due to the purging of hell and Charlie's attempts to save her people, Emily's been forced to confront reality in a way she's never had to before. Actually, in a way that none of Heaven has had to deal with before, because they are facing a circumstance wherein they are entirely in the wrong for committing grievous atrocities. Atrocities she has no real context for until Vox confronts the visiting angels with images of the purge. And this is a reality check she sorely needs, as Emily is the one to suggest the apology gift baskets, which are, and I speak no hyperbole when I say this, the single most brain-dead, tone-deaf, poorly thought out, whacking you with a newspaper yelling, "What were you thinking?" dumbest fucking idea anyone in a cartoon has ever had.
Maybe you should try not being a feeble-minded smooth brain for once.
This is like if Netanyahu sent a bouquet of flowers to Gaza. It's so fucking dumb. Emily does at least make up for it by putting herself in harm's way to save the citizens of hell when Vox loses his mind, and it's pretty clear that her sheltered and privileged upbringing is the reason behind this train of thought, but there's a fine line between naive and moronic, and that line was 5 miles back. That finally brings us to Sarah and Serpentius, who are kind of a package deal this season. Sarah is actually the main focus of Heaven and thus gets the most attention and the best writing and also 2 of the best songs. Her character arc this season is defined by her overwhelming guilt about the fact that the blood of millions of souls is on her hands, and how she struggles to make it right while also handling her job of keeping Heaven safe, a position I certainly don't envy. Last season, Sarah was pretty fucking unlikable due to what I had interpreted as manic zealotry justifying the purges of hell, though that's now been recontextualized as desperate denial of the facts to shield herself. At first, she doesn't believe that Serpentius has been redeemed and tries to force a confession out of him, but once the speaker reveals that he actually was, she immediately begins to suffer a guilt-induced mental breakdown over the fact that each and every soul she approved the slaughter of could have been saved. Watching Sarah search for answers is kind of fascinating because it reveals that Heaven has never had to deal with not just being in the wrong, but unequivocally and monstrously wrong in their actions. She's looking for answers from the other leader-type people of Heaven that they just don't have, all while struggling with the fear that the people of Hell will want some extremely justified retribution, which they do. This is made all the worse by Vox's bullshit, as she then struggles to reconcile the actions of Hell's denizens with the truth that they still possess innate goodness, which is where Serpentius comes in. Serpentius pulls double duty this season by both demonstrating at least part of how redemption works, while also revealing a truth that I really wish more media with creatures like angels would actually explore. That they fundamentally cannot understand humans because they have never had to live the human experience, and are therefore unfamiliar with all of the complications that come with being a person on Earth. Off the top of my head, The Good Place is the only other show that explores this, and I really liked it there too. I think Serpentius is also proof of a read I've had on Madrano's shows for a while now, that the environment of hell forces people to be worse as a means of adaptation and survival. Serpentius always came off as a softie trying to be a real demon, but never really able to pull it off, and that's proven to be true over the course of this season, especially where his actually damning sin is concerned and how he was redeemed. Serpentius' sin was that of cowardly inaction. Through doing nothing, he allowed numerous innocent people to be killed, and it was only through an act of selfless bravery that he was redeemed. I've seen people question how this got him into hell in the first place when all he did was technically nothing, but what they don't seem to understand is that doing nothing in that situation is still making a choice, and his choice allowed for more people to be brutally killed. People are as responsible for their inaction as they are for their actions. Serpentius ultimately serves as the catalyst for Sarah's character development, as not only does he manage to teach her to understand the fear and pain motivating the sinners of hell, but he also helps her to let down her walls and trust in both Emily and himself. She actually shows so much trust in him that she's willing to control herself with Emily's heart, which allows the events of Hear My Hope to happen. Honestly, the biggest issue with Sarah is that her personal guilt is kind of written as the stand-in for Heaven's attitude as a whole, which isn't great. While she may feel guilty and both she and Emily want to make things right, realistically speaking, the first step towards reparations would be for Heaven's leadership and every single exorcist to stand trial and face justice for their crimes. But that can't really happen in the story with how everything's set up, so we kind of just have to accept that Emily's personal efforts to save Hell are enough. Overall, Sarah is the only character in Heaven who has a proper arc this season, and it's a good arc, don't get me wrong, but it can't make up for the lack of such for the rest of the Celestial cast. And yeah, that's it for Heaven. Let's move on then, shall we? Okay, so before we get into the criticism, let me make myself clear. This is not going to be the nitpick section. I am fully aware of the number of people with a parasocial obsession with Vees Pulp and her work, and if you're just looking for someone to uncritically tear into the show, then fuck off somewhere else, please. Part of growing as a critic is learning to look at issues a piece of media has and ask, is this an objective problem, or just something I don't like? And this is the philosophy I approach all my reviews with. This section is for my major criticisms and not petty grievances. Got it? Good. Okay, so about those format issues. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of characters suffer from there not being enough time accorded to them, and this mostly comes down to the show's format. See, Hazbin Hotel is an ensemble cast story, and such stories naturally shift focus to different characters and put less attention on others. That's just how they work. But there still needs to be time dedicated to continuing their arcs where the audience can see, and Hazbin seasons just aren't long enough to make that work, which means that a lot of characters just aren't given what they need to truly work within this format. Even an extremely experienced and skilled writer would struggle to pull off what Madrano is attempting, and she just isn't on that level. This is why Abel and Lute are complete non-characters for half the show. This is why Charlie is only on screen for most of the season when it's time to fuck up another thing, and this is why so many songs have to yada yada over the character development. There's just no fucking time with a season this short. And to be clear, this is not a Vees specific issue. The shrinking of the seasons has been happening all across the entertainment industry, and the reason is money. Animation is expensive and time consuming, and so the corporations decided that since it's both cheaper and faster to make shows shorter, and if it's done sooner they can cancel it and not have to pay the crew more sooner as well, then that's how it's going to be. And stories suffer horribly for it. Oh, they've got perfectly reasonable lies to explain it away, the most common one being that they're just cutting out the less exciting parts, but don't be fooled, it is entirely money motivated. And all the less exciting parts they cut out are the small emotional and character moments that stories rely on to feel real and deliver a proper emotional catharsis. The corpos have simply decided that a well-told story is a small price to pay and they're making it everyone else's problem. If Madrona wants to continue to make this huge ensemble cast story, which she clearly does, she's going to need to fight tooth and nail for more time because otherwise the following seasons will have these exact same problems. Either make it 12 episodes and 30 minutes each, or fucking kick each episode up to 45 minutes to give the characters room to breathe. Speaking of writing issues, the show doesn't have a very high opinion of the general population of Hell. I know it's Hell and therefore supposed to be filled with bad people, but they're also just really fucking stupid and just believe anything they see on TV. This is at its most grievous when the Vees put out that expose and it's just the most amateur hour bullshit you ever see in your life, and people apparently just eat it up. And don't tell me it's Vox's hypno powers, because there's always an indicator of when he's using them, and this is just blatant slander that nobody who isn't already invested in seeing Charlie fail would believe. And they're just as easily swayed by Serpentius when he's on TV too. They just switch opinions whenever the plot needs them to, and at all times are just horribly antagonistic to Charlie and her goals. This is a problem because the fickle nature of Hell's citizens hurts the viewer's belief that they deserve better at all. Ideally, there should be instances outside of the main and supporting cast that reinforce the existence of good that the show claims exists, but so far you're just not given the reason to care about them outside of the fact that Charlie cares. Also, Vox is just handed victory for 90% of the episodes with no pushback because the people that could do something are either being too stupid to not give him the keys to the kingdom, are so shocked by his audacity that they just stand there and watch him showboat, or they're tied to a chair. Even Lucifer's inability to harm sinners, which I adore and think is a great idea, feels like a less impactful revelation due to it being just one more thing that keeps Vox from getting taken down a peg until the plot demands it. It just feels a tad contrived, is my point. The biggest problem with the entire season though, is how it handles abuse. And I'm not talking about Vox's scene with Angel, that actually works well. I'm talking about this. The reason the show's handling of Angel's abuse in the first season worked so well was because it took it dead fucking seriously. Val's treatment of Angel was always framed as the fucking god-awful thing that it was. And in episode 4, it was even shot like a horror movie. It was deeply uncomfortable and hard to watch, and that was good. This is something you want to take seriously and portray as such, but the way this moment was handled was fucking bad. The problem here is that the show made a joke out of Angel's abuse, which fucks with the way the audience is supposed to be looking at his treatment. The audience is now primed to view the physical abuse he suffers as either comical or unimportant, and that weakens the impact of the story you're trying to tell. Which is bad, by the way. Weakening the thematic strength of a character arc for a one-off joke is bad writing. And the thing is, Madrona could have kept this scene in without damaging that narrative integrity if she'd done one of two things. Either she could have removed the comical cartoon sound effects, but kept the brusque nature of the cutaway to demonstrate how little Vox actually cares, or Angel could have been the one recounting that abuse, to show that he plays it off in a joking manner. Humor is a pretty common coping mechanism, and while it wouldn't have been great, it would have at least been a little fucking better. And while you can argue that it makes sense for Vox to show it this way, that still doesn't make up for the damage it does, both to the narrative integrity and to the trust of real-life victims of abuse like me, who appreciated the gravity with which it was being handled in the first season, and are now sitting back yelling Vivsy what the fuck in season 2. Especially when the abuse of men and AMAB people is already treated like a joke everywhere else, and this was one of the few places we could go to see it taken seriously. It's what the character would do is all well and good, but if you're going to risk alienating the people you're depicting that you purport to care about to do so, you'd better fucking hope you can pull it off enough to make it worth it. I've talked before in another video about how Medrano's approach to making the audience care about her characters despite the whole adult comedy thing works, and how it boils down to drawing a line between mean and being cruel, which you can watch if you're interested, shameless plug. But that approach only works if you're consistent with your framing of what counts as cruel, and I'm worried Medrano might be falling into bad habits with this one. Thankfully it is just the one scene, and I'm willing to give her the benefit of the doubt for now, but the damage has been done and I'm none too happy with her right now. Also, I think I get what she's going for with Angel leaving the hotel. Long-term abuse relies heavily on instilling the idea that there is nothing better than what you have and you wouldn't deserve it even if it did exist. And the fact that Angel was already primed to give into self-hate alongside Vox controlling him to hurt the people he cares about would logically set him up to spiral and self-destruct. Like, I get it. But dragging it out any longer than the next season to make Angel's time on the show just a misery merry-go-round for cheap drama and angst is going to be a step too far. This is your only warning, Medrano. Get it done with and pack that shit in, or it's going to be a problem, and nobody who doesn't just get off to abuse will defend you. Oh, but the absolute worst thing in this entire fucking season is how Vox's abuse of Alastor is treated. And no, I'm not fucking talking about the ice cream date, that's just Vox being an absolute loser like he always is. I'm talking about this.
Oh, today was perfect. Right, Val?
Uh-huh, sure, babe.
And what do you think, Alice?
This fake out, oh you thought they had sex joke they're doing, this is fucking disgusting. And it's made all that fucking worse by this.
You two should just fuck already. What? Am I wrong?
Fuck you, Medrano. Just fuck you. Okay, let's break this down point by point. 1. Implying that Vox and Alastor had sex for that moment is a joke at the expense of A-spec people. What's more, it is a rape joke at the expense of A-spec people, as Alastor is a prisoner and Vox would have to force him. Even if it was a fake out, it's still a gross fucking thing to do, and not funny. 2. Even if all Vox did was force Alastor to watch, that is still sexual abuse. Forcing anyone to engage in sexual activity against their will, even if it is just watching, is still sexual abuse. And what's more, it's the sexual abuse of the only asexual member of the cast, and played off as a joke. I need to stress this point. Medrano threw Alastor, a clearly sex-repulsed asexual man, in the cuck chair and forced him to watch two people he hates engage in an activity he wants nothing to do with, as a joke. This is completely indefensible. What the fuck were you thinking, Medrano? 3rd, you can absolutely go fuck yourself with this cheeky little wink to the shippers in the audience. I've talked before about the problem surrounding how people treat Alastor's asexuality. You can go watch my Ace Rep video if you want the specifics. And this isn't helping. Alastor is the biggest and most well-known ace representation in popular media right now, and treating his abuse like a joke tells every ero ace person who watches this that you think their discomfort is a joke as well. And the thing is, I can surmise why it is that Vivsy threw Val's line in the show. Shippers are the most aggressively toxic and entitled people in any fandom who will harass anyone and everyone over fucking nothing. So creators often feel the need to find ways to appease them, which normally takes the form of saying, ship what you want, and Medrano has been the target of the kind of virulently disgusting parasocial bullshit that's normally reserved for trans people. So this was likely her way of hedging her bet so more people would leave her the hell alone. None of which is an excuse, by the way. I don't care how toxic the pro shippers are, it is absolute bullshit to throw A-spec people under the bus like this by fucking with some of the only recognition they ever get. Medrano has even gone on record before that she didn't want to confirm Alastor as asexual because it might ruin the fun for fans, which first of all, I've got to say, is one of the most cowardly things I've ever heard in my fucking life. Stand by your representation, or don't pretend you care. But secondly, this is a lie. She wasn't worried it might ruin people's fun, she was worried it would get her harassed by these sewage-soaked garbage bags that call themselves pro-shippers, and the only reason they wanted anything resembling creator permission to ship what they want is because they knew they could use it as a cudgel when people told them they were being fucking gross. No shipper in history has ever allowed their fun to be halted by something as small as canon. They just want an excuse to harass people who rightfully call them out for the disgusting behaviour. People like to pretend that shipping exists in a vacuum, but it really fucking doesn't. The way you treat the identities of fictional members of marginalised groups, tells the real members of those groups how much you actually care. And anyone who treats a character's asexuality as a minor inconvenience getting in the way of their fun is an asshole. And this season was filled with ship tease moments that Madrona threw in at the expense of error ace representation, so I hope she's fucking proud of herself. All of this tells me that, going forward, Madrona needs to have an A-spec sensitivity reader on staff because pulling shit like this is only going to alienate and upset the people she's trying to represent. You're not just playing with your OCs anymore, Madrona, you're making something that tells a story, and stories are powerful things. Do not make your story one that happens at the expense of the Aero Ace community. At the end of the day, most of the problems with Hazbin, and really both of Vivzi's shows, is that Vivian Madrano really just isn't a very experienced writer, and she seems to struggle with approaching things from a writer's perspective. She has co-writers on her shows, but she still has the final say on everything and is determined to tell the story how she wants to, no matter the cost. And this is far from just a VivziePaw problem. A lot of indie animations have artists and animators as their leads who have a fairly dismissive attitude towards writing and think that they can do it just fine because they know the characters better than anyone, and clearly that alone makes them the best to tell the story. And this attitude towards the storytelling shows in their work. This is something that artists and animators really struggle to accept, but the animation of your show is not the most important part of it. The story is. The animation may draw people in, but it's the story and character writing that keeps people invested. It really doesn't matter how good your animation is. If the writing sucks, your show sucks. And this is not to say that Madrano is a bad writer. In general, she's just fine. Her characters are interesting and consistent, and she can hit all the broad strokes really well, but she struggles with the finer details, with the implications of her writing and the way people might react to them, and she just doesn't think like a writer does. She thinks like an artist and an animator. This is why she doesn't think twice about revealing important lore and character information in tweets instead of in her show, and why she relies so heavily on visual storytelling, which, to be fair, is actually the show's strongest aspect. And that's fine if you're making music videos or playing with your OCs in an Ask blog, but a show needs good writing to keep it together. Overall, Madrano would seriously benefit from taking a writing class and learning to think like a writer if she wants to make sure the show can live up to the promise it has, because otherwise she's going to drive the story right off a cliff. And I don't want to see her do that because I happen to like this show and the characters in it. There's a lot in this show that's really good, and it could not be more obvious that it's a product of love and passion. But intent isn't as important as execution, and the execution of this season was fumbled in a lot of places. But that's enough of that, because now it's time for my 100% objectively correct, totally better than yours, ranking of every song in Season 2 from worst to best. Because that's not a bold claim or anything that can backfire at all. Okay, let's do this. While I don't think any of the songs in this list are objectively bad, this and the next song are the only ones I routinely skipped over. Speedrun to Redemption isn't as forgettable as Welcome to Heaven was, and it has some pretty funny visuals, but it feels like the single most insert song here track on the list, and I just got tired of it by the second listen. I'll be honest, the fact that this song is so important to understanding Vox's character is the only reason it's not on the bottom. This might be contentious placing, but I really don't like Vox, and I'm so fucking sick of hearing his voice. His death was fucking hilarious though. This was kept off the bottom for similar reasons to Brighter, but I also just really like it when the Vees harmonise. Nothing much else to say, this song is just okay. My favourite parts of the song are the "now" at the end and Carmine shutting Vox down. Otherwise it's basically just the evil and lesser version of When I Think About the Future. Lucifer crashing Vox's Trump rally is obviously the best part of this, and this season needed more rock tracks, fight me. I think the reason I like Vox Populi more than the other Vox focused tracks is because it both moves the plot along and is just more fun in general. And then Vox Day is just a natural continuation with some really good visuals where he steals Lucifer's leitmotif. Also, did anyone else look for the 8 when they watched this, or was that just me? I originally planned to put this lower on the list, but it kind of grew on me, almost entirely due to Serpentius making me laugh the entire time. Also this part.
No one here's addicted to crack.
You cannot convince me drugs were not involved in this at some point. Ah yes, the better version of Bad With Us. I've honestly got very little to say about this song. It's kind of the last one before we get to my favourites. It just falls right into the middle of the road for me. Aside from the fact that this song is basically a musical hit and run, I honestly just really like it. I love the choreography and the fact that they are absolutely banging it out to bring Charlie's brain back online. Man, Stephanie Beatrice really needs to be in more songs. Speaking of characters who need to sing more often, Rosie is a goddamn queen, and I love watching her put Alistar in his place while he's forced to just grumble about the consequences of his actions. These two are just fun to watch together, and the reprise is just a fun echo of it. What I especially like is that Vox thinks he's in Rosie's place here, but he's really the one on puppet strings. Poetic cinema, love it. This is another song that really grew on me over time. Charlie's manic spiral is actually fun to watch at this point, and the chaos in the background just enhances it. But the actual showstopper is the inclusion of the Vees. Velvet and Valentina's harmonizing is fucking flawless here, and the climax where they have an opposing duet with Charlie is great. Also a lot of really good characterization going on. I really struggled placing this and Sarah's Confession, and I'm honestly still not sure I'm happy with the order. I kind of just love the hopeful message of the song, as well as the way Pen just breaks through to Sarah. Also, how fucking incredible is it that It Starts With Sorry went from being the most mediocre song to the most impactful leitmotif in season 2. Fucking nobody saw that coming. Also, Live to See a Ray of Sunshine Through the Haze of the Morning Ether is such a good fucking line. Like I said, still not sure about the placement here. Sarah's Confession is a fucking gorgeous song tempered by her torment as she seeks direction and receives fuck all actual help from the speaker, who basically just tells her to have faith and go fuck herself. I've listened to the song so many times and I cannot get over how good it is. It's a punk rock love ballad, how can you not love it? Cherry and Serpentius working through their feelings and memories while matching each other's freak is amazing. Disney wishes it could make a love song with this much actual chemistry. What can I say? I'm a sucker for both the quality of the harmonization and the fact that it represents the culmination of the theme of togetherness. I genuinely get chills listening to the climax, it's so fucking good. Also, despite the fact that this is his entire character arc, Abel's section is fucking great. It's also just fun to watch Alistair hold everyone hostage. What a magnificent bastard. I don't need to justify liking this song. Everyone likes this song. It's badass and hype, and it's only held back by the fact that it's Lute singing about Adam, a man so fucking pathetic they made a joke about him being cucked by Lucifer twice, and nobody misses him. Shame Lute does nothing at all after this. Holy shit, I had no fucking idea Blake Roman could sing like this. This crooning Jessica Rabbit-esque masterpiece serves as an amazing parallel to Loser Baby, and it stands out by just how different it is from literally every other song in the list by a mile. It also stands out by being a really good musical number too, and not just a good song. I almost had this tied with Losing Streak, but that felt a little bit like a cop-out, and the determining factor was that I listened to this one way more. Love in a Bottle is such a good fucking song that works so well to flesh out Husk's character. Husk's Crash Out song serves as an important parallel to Poison, and solidifies the role reversal of the two men. It also doesn't hurt that it's Keith David singing, and the man literally cannot miss. If we don't get proper Husky Dusk payoff next season, I am going to scream. Oh, from me? Viv, you shouldn't have. For context, in my review of the first season, I said that I really wanted a Nifty song where she gets to be absolutely unhinged, and this is fucking everything I ever wanted. What makes this song so perfect, aside from the fact that it's fucking hilarious, is that Nifty is trying to help, but her priorities are so wildly fucking different that I honestly don't know what Charlie expected. Also, in the second part, she's actually saying that Charlie's a great boss and she believes in her dreams, but it's in a language no one in the room speaks, and it's just... God damn, I love Nifty. This song is fucking great. Okay, let's wrap this up. Despite the harsh criticism I had, I do genuinely still enjoy this show. There's a lot to like, and Medrano has gone on record that the next season will center on the Morningstar family, so we're finally going to be getting some fucking answers. However, season 2 is ultimately quite a bit weaker than the first, and the cracks in Medrano's work are starting to show. I remain cautiously optimistic, but I honestly do not blame anyone who's decided that it's just not for them anymore. And if that's you, if you stopped enjoying Hazbin and something in season 2 was a deal breaker for you, then I honestly just advise you to stop watching and disengage. Maybe wait to hear from other people before watching the next season when it comes out in 2 years or however long it takes, because it's just not worth it to keep engaging with something you don't enjoy. For everyone else, I hope you found something in the season that made you happy and made the wait worth it. And I really do hope the show improves so you can continue to enjoy it, because that's something you deserve. I've been writing real slow, and I hope you have a lovely holiday. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. It took me a hell of a long time to get this video done, but if you guys liked it, then it was worth it to me. I'm not quite done talking about the show. I have another video in mind that I'll get to sometime early in the new year, so keep an eye out for that. I'd also like to thank my lovely patrons for their support, especially Lustrous Lizard, Owen Oofs, Wisteria, and Tetraphobe49, with an extra thanks to Tetra for being my sensitivity reader for the ace part of the criticism section. I really appreciate their help. I have one more big video planned for the year and then I'm not entirely sure, but I'll see you guys soon with something a little more relaxed. Have a great day you guys, and I'll talk to you later.